American tour, North American tour. I wanted to make sure that people are aware of a couple of things that he's up to while he's here. He's going to be here, actually he leaves tomorrow, but he's coming back week after next. He'll be here for, he'll be here for about a week. And I wanted to let you know of some things that are going on. Ay, ay, ay. First, the first thing I wanted to let people know about is, I know everybody knows that Lama Marut has written a book, A Spiritual Renegade's Guide to the Good Life. It is, I've actually started to read it because I don't read things online very well, so now I have a hard copy of the book and I've started to read it. It is incredible. It is very much in his style of straightforward and kind of in your face in the most loving, interesting, funny, powerful, compelling way. So I encourage people to read the book, but we are celebrating the launch of this book on June 5th. He's doing book signings, and you can go online and go to book signings where, which are happening around Los Angeles, in all over the place. That's important, but also to come celebrate, to have the opportunity to maybe hang out with him in a less formal setting. We'll have music, we'll have refreshments, we'll be doing kind of what they call impromptu guerrilla interviews. It's really going to be a fun evening. It is on Tuesday, June 5th. I've made this announcement a few times and screwed up the date. So Tuesday, June 5th here. There are cards like this. It would be wonderful if you would take them home, because it would be equally wonderful if you could RSVP, just so we know how many people to prepare for. So those cards are out there. And then Lama Marut, at the end of his stay, he is doing a weekend workshop called Killing Anger that is from Friday evening to Sunday afternoon, 2 or 3 sessions a day that that I just wanted to let everybody know about, because it says, deliver strategies for overcoming your worst enemy, which is your own anger. Discover first how to transform this mental affliction into a positive and useful force. Then learn how to eradicate your anger once and for all in order to live a happy, harmonious life. So you are invited to that as well. And there are some flyers outside, and information about that is online. And you'll be able to, the online address is on this little card, so that's another reason to take it with you. And then the last thing is that if you cannot make any of the book signings and you cannot make the launch party, it will be possible to get some books here tonight. But Lama Marut will not be signing them. If you want them signed, you have to go either to one of the book signings or the launch party. Or both, or all of the above, to really enjoy this wonderful teacher and this amazing event. Enough said? Did I miss anything?
No.
Okay. All right, now you get the deal.
Okay, I'll make it brief. Thank you all very much for coming. Good to see you. I'm Cliff Spencer. It's great to have you here. We're so fortunate and happy to have our spiritual director, Lama Marut, here back with us. Big round of applause. Good to see you. So he's here in the States for about 4 months, teaching in several different places, and we're very happy that he's here tonight. He'll be back in a few weeks or so, and then back in a few months after that. So we're all really fortunate we're all really excited. Please remember that you're here because of the generosity of your friends. We exist out of everyone's generosity, okay? You didn't pay an entrance fee or a ticket price at the door. It's all by donation. So please practice generosity and keep classes like this, nights like this going. Please keep the center going. Please donate and sign up to pledge monthly to support the center. We need your support. But without further ado, let me bring on our great spiritual director, Lama Marut, whose teachings uplift and inspire so many people through his new book, his teachings, his podcast, all over the world. Please give a warm welcome to Lama Marut. I bet you do.
This is the hardest part.
This is the second hardest part.
Second hardest part. Please sit.
Maybe if you could put that one on the side.
One more quick announcement while he's getting settled, which is cell phones off or in stun. Cell phone in stun, yes.
So thank you all for coming. It's really good to be back in LA, back home, as it were. Maybe you're wondering why I'm dressed the way I am. So I thought I'd start with a few words about that. My teacher always told me that if we, meaning the ordained monks and nuns of Tibetan Buddhism, we're following the original intent of the robes, the monastic robes. That the modern Western version of it would be to wear a t-shirt and a pair of jeans that you got from the Salvation Army. And I thought that was a little informal. So I don't know if you know this, but nowadays, to have the robes made, you have to send away to India to do it, and there's a highly stylized, very ornate. You can't just like cook them up at home. You got to bring them to a proper tailor in India. They don't have them like right around the corner here, and it costs hundreds of dollars. Actually, I went to Ross Dress for Less and bought a whole bunch of outfits for less money than it cost me to have one pair of robes made. I'm not kidding, okay? And that's a deviation, from the original intent of those robes. The original intent was to go and find castaway cloth that people had thrown away, and then you would take all the pieces and you'd sew them together into this kind of hodgepodge of a robe, and now they have a stylized version of the hodgepodge. So that you have little squares that very ornamentally put together to sort of remind you of the original fact that these were just rags that you put together. So that's one reason. Another reason is that I think I teach in Singapore to a large Chinese audience, and I felt that it was important to wear the robes there. I taught recently there. Because there's a background in Buddhism there. There's a cultural background, and they have a whole different understanding of what it is to see a monk or a nun in robes than we do in the modern West. In the modern West, you put those robes on and people think you're different. You look different. You're strange and different. The robes were a uniform, right? Uniform means that you all look alike. You put the robes on to look just like the other guy in the monastery. And here they're not a uniform anymore. They're I don't know what's the opposite of a uniform. But they set you apart, you see. And it's my understanding of the spiritual life that it is not the purpose of a spiritual life to set yourself apart from other people, to be different than other people, or to let alone to like pose as superior to other people. I'm not superior to you. We're all the same. Tonight's talk is about we're all the same. And in fact, if you wanted to leave now, that would be all you needed to hear. That's the essence of the talk tonight, is that we're all the same. We're all equal. And we live in a culture where that has been ingrained in us, ideologically, that we all the same, that we all have an equal opportunity, equal rights. And that's very good. We're really lucky to live in a society like that. That's not the way other societies are operated, are organized. You know that, right? Asian societies are not like that in India and also in Tibet. Tibet was a hierarchically oriented society, and we're not living in a society like that. And in a way, you could say we have a little bit of advantage. Since we were brought up in this kind of ideology of equality, we have a little bit of advantage of understanding the true nature of spirituality. So not be set apart, not to learn how to be set apart, but to learn how to be equal, how to recognize the equality of everyone. See? The goal of a spiritual life is not to be better than other people, but to be better for them. Not to be better than other people, but to be better for them, better servants for them. So that's a kind of a long-winded explanation of why I'm not wearing the robes. I've consulted with my preceptor, and I have permission and everything like that, in case anybody wants to police me on that. But that's the explanation, and generally speaking, people sort of seem to respond positively. So, if you don't like it, you're in the minority, probably. I think tonight I wanted to talk. This is a new kind of way of thinking, a new topic for me a little bit. I've been thinking a great deal in terms of this idea of equality. Of human equality, that we're all equal. What is it that all authentic spiritual traditions equally teach? And I've been in the field of comparative religion. That was my academic field. I was in that field for 25, 30 years or something. And so I've been thinking about it from that point of view for a long, long time. But only more recently, in a serious way, about from a spiritual point of view, what do all religions share? All authentic religions, okay? So first of all, I'll distinguish what I have to say about religions from religions that haven't been time tested. I'll put it that way. There are there are many, many religions in Southern California. As we speak, somebody's making up a new religion, right? Somewhere in greater Southern California, someone's in their garage tinkering around going like, maybe I can, convince people to do this. And, and most of them don't last. Most of them are shots in the pan, and then some seem to last a little while, but none of them have lasted very long. Scientology is among the oldest of what are kind of considered the new religions, and it's, only 50, 60 years old at this point, which is a drop in the bucket when it comes to, the history of religions. So, if you have the opportunity, I think, to connect to a religion that's 2,000 years old, 1,500 years old, 2,000 years old, 2,500 years old, or 3,000 years old, why wouldn't you do that instead of picking, some Johnny newcomer who you just don't know? I mean, it might work, it might not work. But, it hasn't been time tested. You don't know yet, you see. The proof is not, it's not in. The results are not in yet. But with, a religion like Buddhism or Hinduism or Christianity or Judaism or Islam, or Taoism or Shintoism, these are old. They've been taken around, test-driven. They've been test-driven many, many times, taken around the block. See what this baby can do. And these babies work. They work. What does it mean to say a religion works? It produces the result of a religion. So we go, well, what is the result of a religion? You're supposed to turn your cell phone off. The purpose of a religion is to be patient with people who don't turn their cell phones off. The purpose of religion is always been this. They all have the same goal. And the goal is very simply put. It's to learn how to be happy. And it's not, in a way, more complicated than that. The goal of religion is to learn how to be happy. And then, well, what is happiness? And it's not kind of usually what we think it is. It's not just having pleasure all the time, see. That's not real happiness. There's a difference between happiness and pleasure. Pleasure is a matter of the five senses, The five senses, you know. You see something that's pleasurable, you hear, feel, taste. What am I leaving out? Touch. But real happiness is not about the five sense pleasures, the five sense organs. It's about mind. It's mental. And so that's one thing. Happiness is not just having everything go right for you all the time. See, if you're waiting for that to happen, you're going to wait a long time. If you're waiting for nothing to ever go wrong, for you to never get sick, for you to never get old, if you're waiting for you to never get old, guess what? Or to never die, you're going to be disappointed. Because that's impossible. You know? And sometimes we're not really clear on that in religion. Sometimes we lapse into some kind of childish fantasy about what's possible. And we think, oh, if I'm really, really, really super nice, then maybe I won't ever get old. Or maybe I'll never get sick. Or maybe I'll never die. If you have a birthday, you're going to have a death day. There is some part of us that will never die. But it's not you say your name to yourself. Okay? You're a goner. We're all goners. We're all in the same boat. And it's the Titanic. And the purpose of a religious life isn't to just fantasize your way off of the Titanic. It's impossible. Nor is it, as Lama Suryadas said famously recently. You know who Lama Suryadas is? He's my hero. I love that guy. He's so awesome. He said the purpose of a spiritual life also isn't to just rearrange the deck furniture, the deck chairs on the Titanic, to just like make some little adjustments and hope to have a slightly better life as you're getting old and die and unhappy. It's to make some revolutionary changes in your mind. And here's, I think, kind of another bottom line here in case anyone has to go early. And to learn how to accept reality. The purpose of a religion isn't to bring you into some new fantasy. We're already in fantasy. We've got plenty of fantasies going on. Thinking that things that are changing are not changing. Thinking that things that have no essences have essences. Thinking that irritating people are by nature irritating. These are all fantasies. Just imaginary. So the purpose of religion is to substitute one set of fantasies for another. The purpose of religion, as the Buddha said, is to awaken. That's what Buddha means, the one who woke up. Like Neo in the Matrix, wake up, Neo. His computer talked to him. Wouldn't it be cool to have a computer that told you every day, wake up? Like in that, what's that, the book Island, Aldous Huxley, is it? Wrote this book called Island, which was a book about a utopia somewhere, where they had trained the birds, the parrots or whatever, to constantly say as you went by, be here now, be here now, be here now. Thich Nhat Hanh does the same thing in Plum Village, right? Every 15 minutes they ring a bell and everyone stops and gets oriented back into reality, checks back into what's happening here and now. Our minds are all over the place, haven't you noticed, right? All over the place, wanting to be somewhere else or sometime else. Almost all of our mental space is just that desire to want to be, or to put our minds there even, to start fantasizing, well, what's going to happen after the talk, and I'm driving down the 405, and it's just in your mind, just all going on in your mind. Or the other kind of fantasy, or the reverse kind, is thinking about what she said to me, last week, over and over again. Yeah, and if I had the wherewithal, I would have come back and said this back to her, and that would really fix her. And I've run this whole scenario about the past, right? About the past, living in the past and the future all the time. So the purpose of a religious life is to make you happy, and real happiness, true happiness, can't be found in fantasy. True happiness is found in reality. True happiness is found here and now, not then and there. Okay? True happiness is, and we get little glimpses of this sometimes. When we actually do wake up, temporarily to the present moment, which means that we're engaged with life fully. That's what it means to live here and now. We're engaged with life fully, and we're not fantasizing about wanting to be somewhere else or sometime else. And we're not talking to ourselves. You know that little voice inside your head that talks to you all the time? Who is that in there? That's always talking to you all the time. Always mediating your experience, narrating your experience, interpreting your experience, and mostly complaining about your experience. You see? We're living life one step removed. We're keeping it at arm's length, talking about it inside our heads instead of living it, unmediated. And then every once in a while we have some experience of unmediated living, and it's then that we're happy. It's then when we lose ourselves, you see, when we lose the self-consciousness, when we lose the narrative, inner narrative, and we actually live, when we lose ourselves and actually live, it is then that we're happy. That's why people work their asses off at dead-end jobs, 16 hours a day, because they can lose themselves in the work. That's why people have hobbies. They can lose themselves in their hobbies. You can lose yourself in your stamp collecting. Anybody stamp collect anymore? I used this example recently, and then somebody like afterwards sort of shamefacedly came up and said, I have a whole collection of stamps at home. Hobbies, right? Our hobbies, so we can lose ourselves in them, so we don't have to think about ourselves anymore. We can just be instead of always thinking about being. We lose ourselves in our latest 3D movies, you know, Men in Black 3. Is it 3 now? And we put on the little glasses and everything's so real. 3 dimension is another dimension, you know. It's a whole other dimension, and you know. And if it's a really, you know, there's a lot of crappy 3D movies, as we all know. That's very disappointing. It's even more disappointing than going to a regular crappy movie is to go to a movie that's in 3D and be a crappy movie. But then we go sometimes to the really good, well-made movies, yeah? You know, some people in this room are probably in the business of making movies that make you lose yourself in them. See, that's the point. That's a good movie, isn't it? Where you just go and you're just like totally absorbed in the movie. And then you look at your watch, oh my God, where did the time go by? 2 hours went by, you know. And you weren't there, you see. You were actually living. That little voice, you know, shut up long enough. So then we get little glimpses of what it would be like to really be in reality, you see, to really be living. And we're happy then. I need not bring up the, you know, sexual orgasm, where you're also not sitting around like going, I'm having an orgasm now. Oh, this is really pleasurable. See, that voice is completely shut up then, in the highest moments of physical bliss, you see. So this should be encouraging to us. See, we should go, I know that it would be wonderful. I know I've had some experience of what it would be like to be truly happy. I really want that. I want that not occasionally and not when the good 3D movie comes out, but all the time. And that's the point of a religious life. The point of a religious life is to gain the ability to be in reality all the time. Not just sometimes. Awakening. You awaken, not into some new dream, but into the reality the way it is. So you can put it like this: the purpose of a spiritual training is to get you to acceptance of reality. We're turning our back. We're running away from reality, at top speed, right? Turning our backs on it, running away from it, thinking, oh, it's going to hurt me, or, you know, I won't like it, or something like that. But don't forget, when you actually are in reality, it's when you're happy, when you lose yourself. You know, I used to go surfing here in Southern California. Every day, you know, for years, I was a very committed surfer. No matter what the weather was like, you know, it was raining, dark, cold, in the middle of the winter. And I'd meet my friends and we'd pull on the wetsuits, we'd paddle out into the cold ocean in the dark. And the only reason we really did that was it was fun. I mean, you know, that's another way of saying, and I'm not sitting around here on my surfboard thinking about myself. It's fun because I can lose myself in the activity. And you just stare at waves and wonder, oh, should I go for this one? Should I go for this one? You're not thinking about it. You're not thinking about you see. So there's a little bit of a kind of a secret there. Life is showing us a little bit of a secret. It's pointing us to not only where we want to go, we want to have that state kind of, all the time, but also to how to get there. How to get to the state of happiness is to learn how to lose yourself. So the point of religion isn't self-improvement. It's losing self. What's a better way of saying that? Self-oblivion or something. Huh? It's not to improve the self, it's to lose the self. Drop the self, you see. And then people will, no, myself, what do I do without myself? Who would I be without myself? You'd be living. You wouldn't be talking about living. You wouldn't be narrating living. You wouldn't be thinking about living some other time, but you'd be living here and now, see. And well, who would be doing that? Well, it would be a sort of a self, but not the self that you got, not the self that I got. It would be a happy self. When we drop the narrative, when we drop the constant complaining, the constant wishing to be somewhere else, the constant self-absorption, self-consciousness, then we get a glimpse of happiness. And we also get a glimpse of the means to happiness, the method to happiness. So all religions, I mean, this is one of my points tonight, but might as well be, so I guess it is now. All religions are teaching that. You show me a religion, apart from some versions of New Age religions, which there are, which says the purpose of a spiritual life is to learn how to be more self-absorbed, to be more selfish, to be more interested in you, you see. And there are plenty of examples of these are the heretical religions of our time. These are the ones that have books in the bookstores in the section called the self-help book section. Almost all, it's a misnomer. Almost all self-help books are not helping you. It's not helping you to think about yourself more. That's not real self-help. That's the problem, not the solution, you see. And no, I'll back up a little bit and say this. There are some people who do need to think about themselves more. There's, epidemic, problems with self-esteem and depression going on now. Very, very kind of curious that here we are living on the top of the heap, both, in terms of our present world and historically. All this prosperity, all this education, all this free time, all these luxury items, and the rate of depression is going up and up and up. What does that picture sort of, indicate to you? Maybe there's some connection, do you think? Maybe there's some connection between the rise of prosperity, which the average income accounting for inflation has doubled in America since the 1950s. Doubled. With the rise of income, with the rise of depression comes, side by side. Maybe there's a reason for that. Maybe we got to the end of the rainbow and found that the pot of gold is kind of stinking poo-poo. And then we go, oh my God, what should I do now? I got everything. I bought the refrigerators, I bought the cars, I got everything. I got the wall-to-wall carpeting. I even got stuff like iPods. I didn't know they even had iPods. In 1950 they weren't selling iPods, right? Stuff that we couldn't even imagine, personal computers. And then we go, and I'm still not happy. Now what? See, and then big crash. Then you have a big crash because you put all your eggs in that basket. So we have an opportunity to think differently about these kinds of things. We're living extraordinary blessed lives, but we're wasting them, completely squandering them, mostly, with just like playing, amusing ourselves with our toys, with our magic toys. We got all these magic toys now, all kinds of them. Amazing magic toys. And we're just playing games with them. Just going to 3D movies. Pulling up our computers and surfing the internet for stuff that we can buy in pornography. It's just a total waste of these kinds of amazing powers. So how did I get off on that? What was I talking about? I was talking about selflessness, right? The ideology that we live under is encouraging us all the time to think about ourselves. And then we have some spiritual version of that in the self-help books. They say, well, think about yourselves even more. Oh, I know what I was going to say. And there are people who need to think about themselves more. If you're suffering from depression, if you're suffering from very, very low esteem, low self-esteem. You got to fix yourself before you come to the Mahasukha Center, really. You see, I'm kind of more and more convinced that, true religion and psychology are working at cross purposes to some degree. And it's probably a mistake to overly psychologize religion, and probably vice versa. But, because psychology, as I understand it, therapy, has as its purpose to make you feel better, isn't it? And in fact, it costs you a lot of money to go to have somebody allow you to talk about how bad you feel for 45 minutes or 50 minutes in the hopes that you'll feel better having gotten it off your chest and having people go, yes, yes, oh, what do you think about that? So like you pay somebody to be interested in you and your problems, isn't it? I've been to therapy, I know. And that's fine for people. I was hospitalized for depression, and you need somebody to be interested in you, because you're not interested in you anymore. All you're interested in is how bad you feel, and so there's a point to that. I'm not saying that there's not a purpose to that, but it's not a spiritual purpose to make you feel better about yourself. It's a spiritual purpose to eliminate yourself, but we can't eliminate yourself unless you got one. You see, we can't do the egoectomy unless there's an ego to ectomize or whatever that is. Egoectomy, to take it away, to strip it away, and usually without anesthesia. You see, the spiritual life is difficult because we're grasping onto the ego so much, and then the spiritual life, any authentic spiritual life begins the process of trying to get your fingers, open your fingers off of the thing you're grasping to, and to learn how to be less selfish and more selfless, to start thinking about other people instead of yourself all the time, you see? And that's not just Buddhism, of course. That's the teaching of all major religions. Jesus taught the same thing, you see. Jesus didn't say, feel better about yourself, you see. He didn't say that. Hopefully they had some kind of therapists in the ancient Near East too that got people ready for Jesus' message, which was you have to die to be born again. You have to let go of this self. You have to cash in the old self if you want to be a higher self. You can't, unless you get rid of the caterpillar, you can't be a butterfly. And we're sitting around kind of trying to doll up the caterpillar. And comb its hair and trying to make it look good. That's rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. It's like, fixing up the caterpillar so that we don't have to let it go in order to be a butterfly. We're afraid. We're afraid of freedom. We're afraid of real happiness. We have, euphoria. We have euphobia. There's some part of us that knows that it's when we're not talking to ourselves, when we're not self-conscious, when we're not grasping to self, that we are happy. But then the rest of us go, no, you shouldn't do that. You shouldn't actually try to do that. It would be important to have that happen once in a while, but let's not actually try to do that on a full-time basis because, we're enamored with our voice. We're enamored with that little voice in our head. That's constantly complaining. It's very perverse. If the voice in the head was constantly saying, oh, everything's perfect. Life in LA is just like, it's such a utopia here. Love the traffic. Gives me so much time to reflect. If that little voice was saying stuff like that, it would be no problem. But how often is that little voice talking to you like that? And how often is it saying, I don't like this, I got a traffic jam, I'm going to be late. I'm going to be late to my teaching on patience. I'm going to be late. Right? I think, in a way you can say that the trajectory of a spiritual life is in three phases. The first phase is to just recognize what I'm talking about and to just say, oh yeah, that's actually true. That little voice inside of my head is kind of whining a lot. And then to also say, and wouldn't it be nice to have a voice that wasn't doing that? Wouldn't it be better to try to have a different kind of inner life? So without that, there's no possibility. Without that kind of recognition, so I'm kind of creeping into my topic tonight. without some kind of recognition that there's a problem, there won't be any steps to a solution. You see? So the first thing is just to recognize, yeah, that little voice is driving me freaking mad, you know, continually whining like this. What can we do about it? And then, you know, you go to an authentic spiritual tradition and they'll give you a method. They'll give you a method for improving what we call karma. Karma in the West, in the East they call it karma. It is the same idea in the West too, of course. What goes around comes around. I think that's in some scripture. But I know for sure that you shall reap what you sow is in a scripture, and that's the karmic principle. Here's another one that's also in some scripture, not an Eastern one. The last shall be first, and the first shall be last. That's another kind of teaching on karma and on the need to be selfless. You see, the need to let other people go first. If you want to go first, you got to let other people go first. If you want to come first, if you want to be happy, you got to let other people go first, you see. So that's the second step. The second step is to start improving your karma, improving the way that you're living, the way that you see yourself living, the way you see yourself acting, the way you see yourself talking, speaking to other people, and the way you hear yourself thinking. And when you start to think, oh, this person is so-and-so, you try to stop that and say, this is not a useful way for me to think. It's not a happy way for me to think. And you try to reorient yourself, reconfigure your life. And that's the second stage. So the second stage has as its outcome a voice that is, you know, much more pleasant to listen to. A voice that's saying, you know, things are good, things are getting better. I'm a happier person. People are nice. People are nicer to me. I'm nicer to me. I'm a person that I can be proud of. I'm trying at least, you see. And that's all we can do, of course. We can only try. I gave this mantra the other night. You know, some of you have had mantras from me in the past, special mantras. So I'll give you two, okay? Since you came all the way to the Mahasukha Center, you get a double dose. For those of you who haven't had the contentment mantra, you get that one also. And the ones who have it, you need to renew it, probably. The contentment mantra is the mantra that if you say this mantra over and over and over again and you start to believe it, you will have contentment, and not until. Say Om. I have enough. Ahum. Ahum means that's the end of the mantra. Om means that's the beginning of the mantra. I have enough means just what it says. Have enough clothes, have enough money, have enough vacations, have enough promotions at the job, have enough friends, have enough partners. Om, I have enough. And when you believe, and it's not Om, I will have enough. Ahum. You see, it's not future. Contentment is in the present only. It's not something that you can achieve in the future. It's simply stopping and saying, it's fine here and now. And until that happens, there is no contentment, you see. Never will be a contentment. If you're saying it will be fine, that's why you're not content, you see. So here's another mantra, okay? This is for the Type A spiritual practitioners in the room, Type A personality spiritual practitioners, of which I imagine there are a few living in Los Angeles, who bring all their kind of anxiety and stress and, you know, hard work ethic and so forth into the spiritual life. And then they get this kind of furrowed brow spirituality. You know, like, I'm working really hard, I'm going to all the teachings, I'm going to every single book signing. And I'm gonna meditate for like 5 hours today. So here's a mantra for you. Say Om. I am doing my best. Ahum. And that's all we can do. That's all we can do is our best. And our best isn't perfect. And if you're waiting for your best to be perfect, you're going to wait a long time for that too. You know. So you do your best. You do your best to live a good life. To live a life that you can be proud of. And you do your best, and that's all you can do. So stop beating yourself up already. You know. If you're doing your best, you don't have to beat yourself up anymore. Let it go. Let all that sort of guilt tripping go. That's not useful to anyone. You see. Just another way to be self-absorbed. Is to think about, oh, I'm a bad person, I'm a bad person, I'm a bad person. I only meditated 4.5 hours, you know. Okay, just do your best. But you have to do your best, right? You can't like fake that either, so, you know, right? So but if you are doing your best, then you could just relax and be happy that you know, And stop stressing. Stop stressing out about things all the time, especially in the spiritual life. If you're stressing out about the spiritual life, it isn't a spiritual life. If you're stressing out about it, it's just not a spiritual life anymore. Okay? Spiritual life is meant to bring you happiness. And on the way to happiness is happiness. The means and the ends are the same. Practice happiness. You have, like how did we think it was going to work? That we'd be unhappy, 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 and then happy? Nothing works like that, does it? You practice it. You practice being happy. You practice being accepting. You practice saying, I have enough, ahom. You practice contentment. And that's the way to get contentment, is by practicing it. And you will fail over and over and over again. And then you say, I did my best, ahom. And you keep going. What else is there to do? See, might as well do that. There's nothing else to do. You want to buy some more stuff and think that's going to work out? See, it helps to have a little bit of kind of recognition that the old ways don't work. 60 years of consumer capitalism. If consumer capitalism could have delivered happiness, it would have done so by now. You see? And just like communism, we lived to see the end of communism. Most of us, everyone, I guess, in this room, saw the wall come down. And it came down because it didn't work. The workers' paradise that was promised didn't occur. And so the workers said, let's try something different. See? How long is it going to be until we tear down the golden arches and say, let's try something different? Just buying stuff over and over and over again, isn't working. So try an alternative. It helps to have a little bit of desperation. Anyway, so what I came here to talk about was what I think may be the four principles that you find universally in all authentic religious traditions. And it's a little bit of a balloon, test balloon. We'll see how it goes, okay? But I think that there's something to it. See if you do too. So you have the handout. So let's start, shall we? I've taken readings from the Buddhist tradition, of course, because I'm a Buddhist, sort of. Was the Buddha a Buddhist? Maybe it'd be better to be a Buddha than a Buddhist. What do you think? Yeah? I mean, this is the other thing. Like sometimes this is another way that religion can divide people instead of bring people together. The purpose of a spiritual tradition is not to make you separate from other people. So the kind of whole identification of I am this, I am that, maybe not so useful, anymore. Especially in this day and age. We've had many, many, many centuries of religious warfare, haven't we? It's continuing to this day. I used to study this in the academic world, religion and violence. And it's statistically proven that wars that are fought over religion are more deadly, more violent, and less easy to stop than any other kind of war. People just fight to the death about these things, about labels, you see. I'm this ism and you're that itty, so let's have a big fight about that. Come on. That's not religion. Religion is meant to bring us together. So anything that's separating us, should maybe be evaluated. If it's functioning to keep us apart, maybe we should scrutinize it and say, maybe we should throw that away. Maybe we should throw away the labels. Maybe we shouldn't call ourselves these kinds of things anymore. How about just calling you a human being? I'm a human. What are you? Are you a Buddhist or a Hindu? No, I'm a human being. There's a great Latin thinker, Roman thinker called Terence. And he had a saying, I am human, he said, I am human. And therefore nothing human is foreign to me. I am human, and nothing human is foreign to me. That's a statement of of connection with other people. Not I am a human and you're not. Or I am a Buddhist and you're not. These are not statements of connection or of learning to be, equal, thinking about ourselves as equal to one another. So anyway, I've picked some readings from Buddhism. I've picked some readings from Hinduism, from Hindu texts, because I used to study Hindu texts and I still study them. And then I picked some readings from Christianity because I was brought up a Christian. But I think you could find versions of these points in the texts of all major religions. Let's see, shall we? The first point, I'll go through the points, okay? And then we can look at them one by one. The first point I call, Houston, we have a problem. You know that expression? Was it the Apollo 13 astronauts? When, I don't know what happened, their spaceship didn't work or something, and they radioed down to Houston and said, we got a problem. And we all got a problem, you see. Without the recognition that there's a problem, as I said earlier, there's no kind of interest in trying to find a solution to the problem. So the first part of a spiritual life is to just say, like, things aren't working out. The non-spiritual life isn't working out. Houston, we have a problem. Then the second one, Roman numeral number 2, I think is on somewhere. Oh yeah, nothing happens for no reason. Nothing happens for no reason. There are no accidents. In other words, the problem that Houston has, or Houston, we have a problem, didn't just happen for no reason. So first of all, the identification that there's a problem here. And second of all, and the problem has a cause. If the problem doesn't have a cause, we can all just go home. You see? If it's just happening for no reason, then there's nothing to do about it, actually. We're completely victimized, completely disempowered and victimized. So I'll go into that later, okay? Then the third point is on page 3, I guess. Isn't it 4? 4, yeah. It doesn't have to be this way. It doesn't have to be this way. There's an alternative. There's an alternative to a life of problems. Of Houston, we have a problem. Okay? And then the last one is you can make it if you try. That there's a solution. There's a method for achieving the alternative. Now, some of you Buddha heads in the room will recognize these as what? Four Noble Truths. Very good. Big stars on your chart. Four Arya truths, 4 noble truths. But I'm suggesting that these are universal. These are universal truths. For those of you who don't know, these are the first 4 things that the Buddha said when the Buddha achieved awakening. He was, the story goes that he got so sort of fed up with the trying, with the kind of half-assed methods. His methods were pretty full-assed, I have to say. He tried very serious asceticism and all like that. But it wasn't working. So he just made this decision and said, I'm just going to sit down under this tree and I'm not going to get up until I'm happy. And that's pretty awesome. That's a pretty awesome sort of thing to do. So then he found the secret of happiness. He found true happiness, and then he was sort of tempted to just sort of relax and stay there under the tree and enjoy his happiness. And so the gods, they sent messengers. The gods come and they start pleading with the Buddha, please teach this to other people. You have to teach to other people. Don't just keep it to yourself. And the Buddha was like, no, they're not going to get it. They won't understand. And, kind of playing hard to get a little bit. And then they finally cajoled him into teaching. So he went and found his former students who had all rejected him, as is sort of typical in these stories, right? The people that are supposed to be your close disciples and so forth, are the ones that betray you. And the same in the New Testament too, right? And they all just betrayed Jesus. And so he went back to the students that all betrayed him. And they saw him coming. And they started, oh, look at, there comes that loser, Gautama loser. Look how well fed he looked. These were ascetics who were living on one rice grain a day and stuff like that. So all like really skinny and everything. And oh, look, he's like all chubby, chubby Gautama. And Buddha just kind of goes, shut up. The Pali is a little more formal. But it's basically like, you don't know who you're talking to. Not just listen. And he says, y'all are suffering. That's noble truth number 1. He didn't say, we all are suffering. He said, you all are suffering. I'm not suffering anymore. And if you're interested in why, then listen to the next one. And so they were all kind of all ears at that point. And your suffering is caused. There's a cause for it. That's the second truth. And there's an alternative to your suffering. Suffering can be stopped. There's a cessation possible. Cessation. And then the fourth one is, and there's a method for achieving. And then, so that's the kind of paradigm. That's the paradigm of all forms of Buddhism, actually. All forms of Buddhism can be fit into that paradigm. But I'm suggesting that all forms of religion can be fit in that paradigm, too. Has to be a recognition that there's a problem. There has to be a recognition that it's not a problem caused by someone else. You see, if it's a problem caused by someone else, we're all in trouble. Or if it wasn't caused at all, it's just random, it just happened, no reason. Then you're going to forget about trying to improve yourself, trying to be happy. It's just out of your hands, totally. And there's an alternative. If you don't believe there's an alternative, you won't try for it either, right? If you think, well, it's just got to be that way, I'm just going to move the deck chairs around here on the Titanic and just go down with the ship because there's nothing else to do, then you won't try. You won't go for it. And then the fourth one is, and there's the method for achieving it. So let's go. Let's look at some of them. I think that there's a certain sort of similarity that you'll see in all the religions as we go through this paradigm. So this one is, from the Buddhist text. The Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life, as you may know, is one of the most important of the Mahayana Buddhist texts, the great vehicle. And this one's from the 4th chapter, this verse here. It says, today there may be health, arogya, there may be enjoyment, sabhakta, and no problems, nir upadrava. But life is fleeting. The word is kshana. Kshana means like a moment, momentary. Life is just momentary. And deceptive. He says, vishamvadi. Vishamvadi is a Sanskrit word that means somebody who's lying. It's a liar. Vadi means somebody who's speaking. Visham means the lies. So life is fleeting and deceptive, and the body is just on loan. Today there may be health. Today everything might be going well here in, your little designer samsara version in Southern California. Today you maybe I can do so many downward facing dogs today. Today there may be enjoyment, all kinds of movie theaters and, entertainment complexes. Today there may be enjoyment. And no problems, no worries. And if you only most of us only get that far. That's as far as we get in the verse. So what are you talking? Why should I do anything? Why should I bother? Everything's going pretty well. Until what? Until it's not. You see? Until it's not. And then life is fleeting. Happiness is fleeting. You can lose it at any time. At any time. And that's not like some weirdo, mystical, magical, metaphysical thing that you have to imagine. That's the facts, ma'am. Just the facts here, okay? Just the facts. The facts is that life is impermanent, yes or no? Well, which part of life is impermanent? Is the economy permanent or impermanent? Is your job permanent or impermanent? Is your relationships permanent or impermanent? Is your health permanent or impermanent? Is your vitality and youth and yoga butt permanent or impermanent? You see? This is why he says the second thing, and deceptive. Because we're constantly taken in by it. We think, I live in California. I don't smoke anymore. I heard that there are people who still smoke, but we don't smoke here anymore. They sent them all to France, by the way. They're all smoking in France still, but nobody here is smoking. I don't smoke. I haven't smoked for a while. And I do my yoga every day, and of course I'm a vegan. And and this and that. And then, what's the unspoken bottom line? That I'll never get sick. I'll never get old. I'll never die. And that's deceptive, okay? You're deceiving yourself. Life isn't deceptive. You're deceived about life, right? If you think that things that are impermanent are permanent, you're totally deceived about life. And we're making this mistake not just once in a while, all the time. Anytime that you get upset, I got very upset recently with a computer. Maybe this has happened to you. It's stupid enough to get angry at people. That's stupid enough. But we're capable, at least I am capable even, of getting angry at inanimate objects. The computer got a new computer and it wasn't doing what I wanted it to do. And I started swearing at it and stuff, 4-letter words of my computer. And it wasn't too long before you stop. You kind of realize at some point, you're kicking the car that maybe you slammed your fingers in the car door and you start kicking it, but it doesn't last too long, right? Before you go, not really hurting the car here, The computer's not getting really upset by the words I'm saying to it, you know what I mean? But we're capable of that kind of stupidity. And that's a problem. Ignorance is not bliss, okay? Ignorance is not bliss. Wisdom is bliss. So to wake up a little bit and recognize there is a problem. And the problem, the problem is not with life. The problem is our resistance to life. The problem is not the fact that the computer didn't work the way you wanted it to. The problem was that you had expectations that it would. And then you were like, oh my God, this computer isn't doing what I expected it to do. Well, wake up to reality. Reality is not going to do what you expect it to do. You can't control it like that, You can control your reactions to it, but you can't control the life, you see? You can't control it like that. So this is just the Buddha said, so here's another thing for you Buddha heads, okay? The Buddha said, life is suffering, that's what he said, right? And then he kind of like spelled it out. Birth is suffering, sickness is suffering, old age is suffering, and death is suffering. And I thought a lot about that, okay? This is kind of the essence of, the noble truth number one. So I'm supposed to know this as a Buddhist. I'm supposed to understand this. And, at a certain level, of course birth is suffering. They make you watch births now. The man can't get off the hook, okay? So you have to, it wasn't like the good old days where you could sit in the waiting room smoking cigars with your buddies and drinking whiskey. You actually have to go and watch it. And even worse, you have to have lessons before you go to watch it on how to watch it properly. And so the lessons they teach you, when your partner is in agonizing pain, screaming and yelling and everyone's upset, and so you give her ice chips. And you say, breathe, honey, breathe. And then well, yeah, okay, good. And what else? That's all. That's the entire preparation that you have. So obviously birth is suffering. There's blood everywhere, Everyone's complaining, everyone's crying, the baby's crying, mom's crying, dad's like totally ineffectual. The nurses are running around hoping that you're not going to die, Birth is suffering, obviously, at some level, birth is suffering. And then sometimes people go, oh no, it's so beautiful. We're going to take videotapes of it, and then watch it over and over again. What? What's wrong with you? Old age is suffering. In case anybody getting older here? Old age is obviously. You start looking. I start looking in the mirror. I'm going, how did my dad get in there? Right? Little aches and pains constantly. Little things go wrong. You don't even do anything, and stuff stops working. It's not like sometimes in the morning I wake up and I got a stiff neck, and it's not the day before I wasn't tackled by anybody, and I wasn't in a car crash, no whiplash. It's just like I went to sleep, and then old. You see? So old age is suffering. Sickness is suffering, obviously, right? When you're sick, it doesn't feel good to be sick. Sickness is suffering, and death is suffering. When you lose a loved one, it's hard. It's suffering. And when you face your own death, it's hard too. Suffering. So at one level, of course, it's true. But here's another level, okay? I think a deeper level. It's not that birth is suffering. It's not that old age is suffering. It's not that sickness is suffering. It's not that death is suffering. It's our resistance to these things. It's our thinking that they should be different than the way they are. It's the idea that birth should be this kind of, beautiful, magical moment, all bathed in gold light, where everyone says, oh, I'm having a baby. And then it doesn't turn out that way. Our expectations aren't met. It's not that birth is suffering, it's our expectations of birth that cause us suffering. It's not old age that's suffering. It's the idea that we're going to be young forever. And then old age comes and you go, oh, how could this have happened? Well, it's reality. That's how it happened. It's reality. It's not a dream. It's not your dream. It's not your imaginings. It's not what you think should have been. It's what is. And it's the resistance to what is that causes suffering. It's not sickness that's a problem. It's the expectation that we'll always be healthy. That it's somehow our God-given right to never lose our health. And then, reality sets in again, and then you lose your health. And you go, I wonder how this is. Well, it's life. That's how it happened. And death is also not suffering. Death is part of life. What did you think? That you would never lose anybody, that you would never die yourself? And at some level, it was, yeah, that's right, I did think that. At some level, I thought, my partner would always be there. I thought my mother, my father would never die. My husband, my wife, my children, my friends would never die. And then they die. And then you go, oh my God, I've gone to pieces. My friends have died. My friend died. Well, and it's not the point to just like get inured to that, okay? It's not the point, but to have a little bit of like wake up about the nature of reality here. If you're born, you will die. If you have health, you will lose it. If you're young, you will get old, maybe, unless you die first. See, and this is reality. So it's not the facts of life that are the problem. It's our resistance to the facts of life. It's our wishing that the facts of life would be different than the way they are, and that causes us a great deal of pain. Wishing that impermanent things were permanent. Wishing that change wouldn't happen. Or that change would happen in the way that we wanted it to happen and not in the way that it does happen. Thinking that we should be able to direct change all the time. Thinking that you can change the present in the present brings us all kinds of unhappiness. You can't change the present in the present. You can change the future and you can change the past, but you can't change the present in the present. You can change the past by thinking about the past differently. This is my whole book, by the way. By reinterpreting the past, and we always have that in our power, to think about the past differently, and you can change the future by acting properly, carefully, wisely in the present, where you're creating the causes for future results. But once the causes of the past have ripened into the results of the present, you can't just make them go away. You can't say, oh no, I didn't want that. Go back into the ground flower. You planted the seed, you gave it the sunlight, you gave probably a lot of manure, and then it pops up and you go, oh, that's a different thing than a flower I didn't want. It doesn't go back down like that. Okay? And that's reality. That's the facts. This is reality instead of this kind of imagining delusion that we're living under. So we got one verse done. Okay? That's good. Happiness is obtained only occasionally. Master Shantideva is a little bit pessimistic here, but he's kind of true. Happiness is obtained only occasionally and with difficulty. But suffering, dukkha, occurs regularly and without effort. Ayatna is a word that's often found in yoga texts, that you should exert yourself, yatna, have effort. You don't have to make any effort at all for suffering to come. Suffering is going to come automatically, pretty much, yeah? Problems will come. But it's only because of suffering that there's renunciation. So now he's saying, and so, never let a good disaster go to waste. If things always went right for you, you would have no reason to pursue a spiritual life, you see? If everything always went right for you, and unfortunately many of us are in a situation very close to that, where things are going right enough of the time, and for long periods of time that we sort of space out on the fact that this isn't a permanent situation. So, if you're in a disaster, don't let the disaster go to waste. You're in a very, very important sort of moment in your life where the scales have finally fallen from your eyes and you kind of see reality for what it is. This kind of thing can happen to me at any time. It could happen to other people. It has been happening to other people all the time. Other people have always experienced it. Now I'm experiencing it. Now I recognize that this is the nature of life. This is you can lose your health, you can lose your job, you can, lose your prosperity, just in a moment, just like that, just in a moment. So, pay attention. In the disaster, pay attention. Never let it go to waste. And then in between disasters, don't forget. And those are the only two states that we're in here. In a disaster or between them. And if you don't believe me, just wait. So the next one's coming, and it's going to be pretty much like the last one. Unless you do something about it. You see, unless you prepare yourself for it. Unless you get this, what he calls renunciation here. And then people hear renunciation and go, oh, gosh, that means I can't have a nice car or something. And it doesn't mean that. Oh, I can't go to 3D movies anymore. It doesn't mean that. It means that you reorient the things that are important in your life. You reorient them. You get a new center in your life. And you stop thinking that the only thing that's important is making money and working and, you know, going and getting entertained and going out to eat all the time. See, there's nothing wrong with those things, but if they're the only things that you're doing, the only things that matter, then you're going to be sorely unprepared for the next disaster, you see. So get some renunciation, have some, so be strong-minded, he says, you see. You know, don't just sit around whining in the disaster. You pull yourself up and say, and now I'm going to try something new, you see. Those are, my teacher used to go around asking all of us, you know, what happened to you? Why are you here? You know, what happened to you? And every serious spiritual practitioner's got a horror story, at least one or two, you know. And that's one very, very important way that you get serious about a spiritual life, is that, you know, you get this kind of, you know, wake-up call that, you know, life isn't going to work out. Untrained, an untrained life isn't going to work out for you. You're just waiting for the victim, waiting for the next disaster. And here's another way that you can get serious about a spiritual life, I think. You top out. You can bottom out or you can top out. And sometimes people who are observant enough can kind of realize that, you know, it's not too hard to realize the kind of small superficial goals that most of us have in life. You know, making a good living and having a family and, you know, reaching some kind of, you know, professional achievement goal, you know, level. And that's not impossible. It's not really that hard. And then, you know, maybe you get to the age of 35, 40, and you're 45, and you've done everything like that. And they say, well, no, there's this other hoop that you need to jump through. And you go, I'm done jumping through hoops. What's the point? It's just more of the same, right? And then you get a little bit of, like, you know, what do you call it? Mid-age crisis? Mid-age? Is that it? Middle-age crisis? Midlife crisis. Midlife crisis. And you go like, so now what do I do for the next 20 years, 30 years before they send me out to pasture to play golf in Phoenix, you know? Then you get serious about an alternative that way too. But one way or the other, you know, it's important to recognize, this is number one, right? That Houston, we have a problem. And we need to do something about it. While I might obtain many things and enjoy happiness for a long time, when I leave this life, it will be empty-handed and naked, as if stripped bare. And that's, you know, in summary, you can't take it with you. And so this is a very important also practice that we're encouraged to do in the Buddhist tradition, is to remember your death pretty much on a daily basis, to remember your mortality, to remember that you're not going to live forever. Is anyone unclear on that? You know, no, intellectually we're all kind of like, yes, I know, but I'm going to live for a really long time. You see, I do downward facing dogs. I don't smoke like those losers in Paris. I'm going to live for a really long time. I should at least get the average lifespan. And probably, since I'm a yogi and all, I should get more. So we're looking at 90, probably, you know. And that's what we think, right? And there's no guarantee of that. You realize that? That's the second part of the awareness, what they call death awareness meditation. First one is to recognize that you are mortal. The second one is to recognize that you have no guarantee that you're even going to make it through the night. No guarantee whatsoever, okay? My friend started dying on me when I was 15. My first close friend died at the age of 15. He was murdered. And he didn't come anywhere close to the average lifespan. Nowhere close. Okay? It's just like that. So, and then the third part of the death awareness meditation is to say, and what's going to matter when I die? And that's what this verse is pointing to. So is your money going to matter? Is your car going to matter? Is the hassles that you're having with the person at work going to matter? You see, what's going to matter? And if you do this kind of meditation, recognition on a daily basis, you know, it puts things in perspective very, very clearly and very quickly. Very good way to live, actually. You stop, like, you know, sweating the small stuff. Isn't that the term? And what's the next part? And it's all small stuff. When it comes, you know, in the face of, you know, the limited amount of time that you have left on this planet, you know, what's there to really hassle about? What's there to really worry about? How many arguments would you get into, you know, tomorrow if it was your last day to live? You see, you're too busy. I'm dying. You know, I don't have time to argue with you. All right, so that's from the Hindu tradition, and I thought, you know, these are a couple of my favorite passages from the New Testament. You know, I was brought up, learning these kinds of verses in Sunday school. I know many of you didn't have a background in Christianity, but this is your culture, okay? you're brought up in a Christian culture, so you probably should know something about Christianity, I'd say. You know. Do not and not as it's mediated by the press's reportage on fundamentalism. Okay, read the Bible. Read what Jesus said. And he said stuff like this. Do not store up for yourself treasures on earth, where moth and rust consume and where thieves break in and steal. So this is a very poetic way of saying, don't put your eggs in baskets that are going to drop, right? Don't put too much of your life's blood into temporary things, into money, into jobs, into relationships even. Are relationships changing or unchanging things? Permanent or impermanent? No, but we're soulmates. We're going to be together forever. So I've performed several weddings, and I insist that nobody swear that to each other anymore. It's just absurd in this day and age to say, I swear, to God or on the Bible or on it, that we'll love each other and be together until we die. You can love each other until you die. That's okay. But being together until you die, probably not. So even relationships, don't put too much of your life's energy into these kinds of changing things. Store up for yourselves treasures in heaven. It means the permanent things, the eternal things, the things that will last. The things that will last is what you do to your mind. That will last. The things that the way you change yourself, the changes you make on the hard disk, not on external things. Where neither moth nor rust consumes, and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. This is very important too. We put efforts into the things that we think are important. We put great efforts into it. Many of us have put great efforts into our education, into our jobs. I know people, I'm sure there are people in this room who get up absurdly early to fight the traffic every single day in order to get to their job where they work, 8, 10, 12 hours, and then fight the traffic back home. By the time you're done with your work day is 14 hours, just to go to your job, just for your job, just to make a living. And we do this over and over and over again. I used to make the same effort surfing. Many people put enormous efforts into their hobbies. You see, what if we put even some fraction of that into spiritual self-improvement, into spiritual life? Just a fraction of the kinds of efforts that we put into these other kinds of things that will not pay off in the end, will not last. Nobody will care at the end, how many hours you spent in traffic, fighting traffic to get to your job. Nobody will care. You won't care. It'll all be just like a dream over. You talk to old people. It's kind of important to do that once in a while. Nowadays we keep them all segregated so we don't have to look at them and talk to them that much. But you talk to them, they all say the same thing. It just goes by like that. Just like that, they say. And then you go, yeah, old timer. Yeah, too bad for you. And just went by like that. But what do you think, you're different? When you get older, just be like that too, just like that, just gone by like that. So there's two ways to be old. And both of them include, having your body break down, having your mind break down, and being in pain, not being continent anymore. Both of them, you see. But then there's the people who are old who are bitter and unhappy and filled with regrets. And that's one way to be old. And then there are the people who say, I did my best, And that's another way to be old. Which kind of old do you want to be? If you're lucky enough to get old, which kind of old would you like to be? And that second one is made possible not later, you see. I did my best and I'll get to that, sometime later. It means now. You start doing your best now. Live the life that you're supposed to be, that you're supposed to be leading, you see. Everyone knows, I think, at some level, the kind of life that you're supposed to be leading. And so if you're making some approximation of living up to your own ideals, then you can relax about old age, It won't be that pleasant, maybe, but it won't be the torture that a person who has reached old age with great bitterness is undergoing. That's really sad to see that. So no one can serve two masters. This is a very famous verse from the Bible. No one can serve two masters. For a slave will either hate the one and love the other, or be devoted to the one or despise the other. You got to choose. You got to serve somebody, said Dylan, right? Might be the devil, might be the Lord, but you got to serve somebody. You can't serve two masters, he says here. You can't serve God and wealth, mammon. Can't serve God and wealth at the same time. And wealth just stands in here for all consumerism. All like selfish, greedy, greed-driven consumerism in its largest sense. You got to choose. There's just too little time. We have too little time and too little energy to put all our efforts into, working and saving and buying and taking out loans and paying off mortgages and selling short sales and, all of that kind of effort. There's just nothing left. There's nothing left for any serious spiritual life. Which is not to say that you quit your job. I didn't say that, okay? Doesn't mean that you quit your job or you don't have any relationships anymore, something like that. But you reprioritize what's important. And you don't lose all what they call in yoga, prana. You don't give all your prana to the job. Prana in energy, chi. And you come home completely depleted. A prana depletion. They just suck it out of you. Have you noticed? After 8, 10, 12 hours at the job, you got nothing left when you come home. You just like flop on the couch and watch stupid television shows. And that's no way to live. You see, figure it out. Figure out like how to reorient your life. And it's not that hard. It's not that hard to make just a few little changes and start living a lot saner when it comes to, what's important in life. He called the crowd with his disciples and said to them, "If any want to become my followers, let them deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me." This is saying, let go of the caterpillar. Deny yourself means let go of the caterpillar. If you want to be a butterfly, you got to lose the caterpillar. For those who want to save their life will lose it. Save the little life, the little self, hanging on to the little self. And those who lose their life, who let go of the coal, who let go of the identification with the caterpillar, those who lose their life for my sake and for the sake of the gospel will save it. For what will it profit them to gain the whole world and forfeit their life? There's another verse on renunciation, really, on getting clear on the concept. So that's the first problem. That's the first principle, rather, that there's a problem here. Houston, we have a problem. And I think one way to sort of summarize what the problem is, there's lots of different possible ways of explaining the problem, right? But I think increasingly, I think that the problem can be summarized rather succinctly. The problem is dissatisfaction. I mean, you don't even have to use a big heavy word like unhappiness. Just dissatisfaction, constant dissatisfaction. Mick Jagger was right. You can't get no. Can't get no satisfaction. We try and we try and we try and we try, but you can't get no. Over and over and over again, trying. We're constantly itchy. We have itches, right? Dissatisfaction itches. And then we scratch them, hoping that this will be the last scratch. If I only scratch, I want an iPad. If only I got an iPad. 4, is it? We're up to 4 now? Or 3? 3 or 4? Is it 3? If only I got an iPad 3, itch. And then you scratch it, ooh, I got an iPad 3. And then you take it home, and then like what? The half-life on these things is shorter and shorter and shorter now. And this is, but I need an iPod, I need an iPhone, I need an whatever. Isn't it interesting that they call them I? I, it's all of I. I. Yeah. And we just constantly, and really behind every scratch is the wish that this would be the last one. See, we're hoping for the grand state. You can call it nirvana, you can call it moksha, mukti, you can call it salvation, but what it really is the grand state of itchlessness, where we won't have any more itches, see, just satisfaction. We're all just looking for happiness, and that's what happiness means, that you're happy with what you have and not wanting more. In the yoga text, they talk about 2 forms of dissatisfaction. They call them the 2 energies that are running through the side channel, for those of you like into the whole thing, the inner body. Raga and Devesha. Raga in Sanskrit means desire for something that you don't have. I want, if only I got something that I don't have, then I'd be happy. Raga. And then the other kind of unhappiness, dvesha. Dvesha means if only I got rid of something I do have. Aversion, they call it. See? These are just two forms of dissatisfaction. So the purpose of yoga, for those of you who care, is not to get really, really, really flexy and bendy. It's not to get a really good yoga butt. It's not to like pose on one foot on the cliffs of Ecuador somewhere while somebody takes a photo of you for yoga journal. This is all just a total misunderstanding of yoga. The purpose of yoga is what they call getting the winds to enter, stay, and dissolve into the central channel. And they go, ooh, that sounds awesome. That sounds so magical and mystical. Yeah. What it means is you're content. You say, well, that doesn't sound as nearly as good as getting the winds to enter, stay, and dissolve into the central channel. It sounds much more difficult and important. But it comes to the same thing. It means the same two ways of describing the same thing. As you get rid of raga and dvesha, you get the energy that was formerly running in these two types of discontentment to run into the central channel means to be focused in contentment. In contentment. Bliss. And you go, oh, yeah, that sounds better. Yeah. There's no bliss without contentment, okay? Contentment is entry-level happiness. Maybe there's bliss after that, maybe there's ecstasy, maybe there's all kinds of cool stuff after that. But without contentment, there's not going to be nothing. Can't skip over the contentment to get to the bliss, you know what I mean? So contentment is first. And then, as I always say to my students, who don't like to hear this any more than you do, they were hoping for like, unicorns and butterflies and, magic and, flying through the sky and all of that. But, I said, well, what if I told you that the whole purpose of your whole practice is to just get to contentment? Could you be discontent with that? See? If you actually got to contentment, would you go, oh, I'm discontent, I wanted ecstasy, I'm discontent with contentment? It is impossible, right? The logical problem with that. So strive for contentment. And then if there's more after that, if there's unicorns and butterflies and flying in the sky and angel wings, then fine. And if there's not, then fine too, because you'll be content. Okay? Win-win. Can't lose here. Strive for contentment, and it's not that hard. What's our excuse? What's the excuse of people sitting in this room for not being content? It's a little bit embarrassing. I used to go to India quite a bit for study, and I used to live there, for 9 months, 10 months at a time. And in India, everything's all mushed up together. There's not like the nice neighborhood and the ghetto. It's all the same. So I lived in a very nice neighborhood, but there was there were people on the streets, living on the streets right outside my building. And I would go to work every day and pass them. Many beggars, people asking me for money. And it was a big crisis, for a nice liberal, boy like myself, American boy like myself. So I was like, I can't give to everyone. There's too many. Too many. What should I do? People are nodding their heads. If you've been to the third world, you probably had this experience where they just get mobbed, and there's nothing. You can't really do anything. You can't help all those people. So I asked my neighbors, what should I do? And they said, well, what do you do? I asked them, what do you do? They were hit up the same way I was. You see, they're middle-class Indians. And they said, well, we adopt one. We take one beggar and we adopt one, and every day we give that one beggar a little something. We can't give to everyone. We don't have enough to help everyone, but we can give to one. So I found, I adopted my beggar. And every day I would give him something. And then when I went home to America, it wasn't too long before I started whining about my life here in America. And then I tried this practice. I highly recommend it. When you find yourself whining about your life, sit down, close your eyes, and imagine somebody living on the streets in a cardboard box on $2 a day or less, and try to explain to that person why you're having a bad day today. And generally, you're probably not going to get through even the first sentence. I'm having a bad day because my car... You have a car? Yeah, I have a car. My car isn't running that well. My computer... You have a computer? Yeah, my computer is like, it has little bugs in it. Oh. Okay, it's embarrassing, isn't it? It's a little embarrassing. So you can embarrass yourself into contentment, maybe. Try that method and see if you can embarrass yourself into at least stop whining about it. Very, very effective, I think. All right, so the second thing. So we can summarize the first thing is, Houston, we got a problem. You can summarize it, and it's dissatisfaction, chronic dissatisfaction. So then the second thing is, and it's caused. Okay, doesn't happen for no reason. And this is very, very important as a spiritual practitioner, and it's universal in all spiritual traditions. They all assume that we, all religions assume that we ourselves are the cause of our own problem. They don't say somebody else is the cause of our own problem, and they don't say, and there is no cause to the problem. Modern secular ideology tends to do one or the other. It's somebody else's problem is one sort of kind of solution that we've hit on. When just check it out. Next time a plane goes down, for example, just watch. The finger starts going like this immediately. Whose fault is it? The plane went down. See, there's a mechanical error, pilot error. Somebody's got to be blamed. We got to find somebody to blame. Or it's just like, well, there's no reason at all. And things don't they just happen for no reason. There's an insurance term like this, act of God. Just the act of God means not that we believe in God, but act of God means it just happened for no reason. So no spiritual tradition is teaching this. Every spiritual tradition teaches suffering has a cause. Disappointment, the chronic disappointment has a cause. And it's not your ex-wife. It's not your ex-husband. It's not somebody else's fault. So let's check it out. This is from Buddhism. This is actually Pali. This is the Pali text, not Sanskrit text. This is from a text called the Dhamma Chakkapata Vatana Sutta. When I was studying Sanskrit in graduate school, we always used to make fun of Pali. Sanskritists make fun of Pali because it sounds like kind of Sanskrit baby talk. Dhamma Chakkapata. Now this, O monks, is the truth of how suffering arises. So this is the Buddha's explanation of the cause of suffering. This is one of the explanations in Buddhism of the cause of suffering. This is one of the older ones. It is this craving. The word is tanha. Tanha in Sanskrit means thirst, craving, which leads to repeated rebirth accompanied by desire for sensual pleasure, making pleasures here and there, seeking pleasures here and there. In sum, craving for the objects of sensual desire, craving for continuation, craving for termination. I just explained this sutra actually in terms of the yoga, raga and dvesha. Okay? He's saying exactly the same thing. The problem is dissatisfaction. Craving, always craving. Craving for what? Craving for stuff. So he throws in stuff here also as a whole separate category. Sensual pleasures. It's craving for sensual pleasure. And then he talks about the two kinds of dissatisfaction. Craving for continuation means I want to keep what I have that I like. I want to keep it. I want to keep going the things that I like. And then the other one, and for termination. And I wish that irritating person would get the hell out of my life. Termination, right? Craving for termination. Well, another kind of, sort of enunciation of chronic dissatisfaction. Wanting stuff that you don't have, objects of desire. Wanting to keep the things that you do have, that you like, continuation. And wanting to get rid of the things that you do have that you don't like, termination. Let's do another one. This is from the Hindu text, Bhagavad Gita. Everyone heard of the Bhagavad Gita? Attachment to the objects of the senses arises in one who is always thinking about them. In case you hadn't noticed that too. And by the way, we're living in a culture where we're encouraged to always think about the objects of the senses. Bombarded with commercials and advertising every which way. Attachment to the objects of the senses arises in one who's always thinking about it. The word here is dhyayata. Dhyayata comes from the same root that gives us jhana. What's jhana mean? Anybody know? Meditation is one of the words for meditation. So he's saying if you're meditating all the time on stuff, on objects of desire, then you're going to be attached to it. You're going to be attached to these things. From attachment comes desire. And from desire, anger arises. This is very interesting psychologically. He's arguing that desire actually is prior to anger, is in fact the cause of anger. And if you think about it, there's a case to be made for that. We get angry when things that we want don't happen. Right? When our desire is thwarted, then anger arises. So if you trace it back, you can say the problem's desire. Problem's desire coming from attachment to the object, the problem's desire. And desire, and then people go, oh, no, you know, desire, what's wrong with desire? And there's, at a certain level, there's nothing wrong with desire. The problem isn't desire. The problem is, you could say, bad desire. So bad desire is desiring for things that won't bring us the happiness that we're looking for in them. That's bad desire. Bad desire is wanting to scratch an itch that's just going to start itching again. See? Like that happens, right? When you get a mosquito bite or something like that and you scratch it, and then, you know, the more you scratch it, the more it itches, a rash or something. And that's bad desire, because it's not bringing you itchlessness. So then there's good desire, you could say. Bad desire, this is another way of talking about the trajectory of a spiritual life. You replace bad desire with good desire. And what's good desire? The desire to be happy. The desire to, you know, to have at least a few less itches. And behind that kind of good desire is the ultimate desire, which is the desire for the end of itching altogether. In other words, you can say, the end of the ultimate desire is the end of desire, which is what we really desire. What we really desire is to not desire anything anymore. And so desire that. That'd be a good thing to desire. You see? A little bit paradoxical, right? But we'll get to that point by desiring it. See, desire is motivation, isn't it? Desire is, we do what we desire. We work for what we desire. So desire the end of desire and start working for that. How do you work for that? What kind of work would be entailed in working for desirelessness? Practice contentment. And that's hard. If you don't believe me, just try it. Try the work of practicing contentment with your life. And that's the work we need to do to achieve the goal of contentment. The only way to get to contentment is to practice contentment. The only way to live a peaceful life is to live peacefully. The only way to achieve happiness is to practice happiness. It's the same. All right, so now we move on to the Ashtavakra Gita. Some of you may have heard this text. It's an awesome text that I just got done teaching on the World Wide Web. Anyone take that class here? Lauren did, I know. Yeah. I knew you were there. Yeah. So, awesome text, isn't it? Poof. So here's just a little taste for the people who weren't there. As long as desire, the seat of the inability to discriminate. Very interesting. Another kind of interesting psychological insight. That desire, this is kind of bad desire, right? That desire is defined as the inability to discriminate between what's good for you and what's bad for you. See? What to give up and what to take up, they say in Buddhism. Is alive, as long as the desire is alive, there will be avoidance and attraction. Raga, dvesha, dvesha, raga. Avoidance and attraction. Avoidance of things I don't want. Yeah? And attraction to things I don't have that I do want, which are the root and branch of this cycle of suffering. So I didn't just make this stuff up, about the problem is dissatisfaction. So if the problem is now, okay, kind of cut to the chase here a little bit. If the problem is dissatisfaction, what do you suppose the cause of the problem is? We've already gone through enough verses to indicate it. If the problem is dissatisfaction, what's the cause? Dissatisfaction. Right? If the problem is dissatisfaction, the cause also is dissatisfaction. So what's the solution, do you suppose? The end of dissatisfaction. I just cutting to the chase. Now the serpent. Okay, kids living in the Western world, here's from one of your Ur texts, of cultural texts, Genesis. No Genesis? In the beginning. That's what Genesis means. This is the problem. This is the cause of the problem according to the Jewish and Christian text from Genesis. Now the serpent was more crafty than any other wild animal that the Lord God had made. He said to the woman, that would be Eve, "Did God say you shall not eat from any tree in the garden?" And the woman said to the serpent, "We may eat of the fruit of the trees in the garden." But God said, You shall not eat of the fruit of the tree that is in the middle of the garden, nor shall you touch it, or you shall die. So, in other words, the serpent says, did God say you could eat from the trees? He says, yeah, all of the trees, except for this one. He said we could eat from any tree, we could have anything we want, we could do anything we want, just don't do this one thing. But you see where is this going? But the serpent said to the woman, you will not die, don't worry. For God knows that when you eat of it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil. You will lose your innocence, you see. You will lose the innocent state where there is no good and evil. We're transcendent of good and evil. There's no good because there's no evil, and vice versa, you see. Yeah. You'll lose that kind of like harmony with reality, in which there is no dichotomies of this, that, bad, good, up, down, like that. You will die. You will not die, says the serpent. So when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, and that it was a delight to the eyes, and that the tree was to be desired to make one wise, she took of its fruit and ate, and she also gave some to her husband who was with her, and he ate. Then the eyes of both were opened, and the loss of innocence, right? Fall from innocence. And they knew that they were both naked. It's a very, very interesting text. They started getting ashamed. They were ashamed. They became self-conscious. Thus, you could argue that the fall is the fall into self-consciousness, into having a little voice going, oh, you're naked, you better cover it up, somebody will see you. And they sewed fig leaves together and made loincloths for themselves. So the fall from innocence, from simplicity, from humility, from unself-consciousness, into our present condition. So from the Christian and Jewish point of view, and also Islamic, the cause of suffering is disobedience. The cause of suffering is not doing what God told you to do. God just wanted you to be happy, just wanted you to relax in the hammock in Eden, and just eat whatever you want. And this is no. The great naysayers, we're all the great naysayers. No, I don't want to be happy. I want to be independent. I want to be individual. I want to be me. I just want to be me. You know that song? I just got to be me. I just want to be a self. I want to be a self. I want to be an individual. I don't want to live in this kind of innocence of selflessness. So now we have to struggle back. Having fallen, we have to struggle back to Eden. You see, back to that same state. What we are searching for is the same state that we have lost. What we are searching for is our original condition, as they say in some forms of Buddhism. You're looking for your original self, your original condition, your true nature. And that's the myth of Genesis. It doesn't have to be this way. Every religious tradition also offers an alternative to what we call in the Eastern tradition samsara, suffering life. So we'll start with a Christian text this time. Once Jesus was asked by the Pharisees when the kingdom of God was coming, when's everything going to be hunky-dory again? The kingdom of God. And he answered, the kingdom of God is not coming with things that can be observed. It's not going to be unicorns. The kingdom of God isn't going to be external, you see. It's not going to be the kingdom of God when all the traffic on the 405 disappears. Those are not the signs of the kingdom of God, a kingdom of heaven arising. Not observed, nor will they say, look, here it is. Oh, look, there's the unicorn. There's the no traffic on the 405. There all the colors are perfect now. It's not outside, you see, not external. For in fact, the kingdom of God is among you. Sometimes they translate is in you. The kingdom of God is in you. So where's the alternative to a life of suffering? Is it some other time or some other place? Is it on Alpha Centauri maybe, where everything's perfect? Where's the kingdom of heaven? This is right here, right among you, right now, as a potential, right here, right now. This is next text is from the Gospel of Thomas. I don't know if you know, but this is what they call one of the Gnostic texts. Gnostic is a kind of a general term, kind of a catch-all term for a whole lot of texts from the ancient world that didn't make it into any of the authoritative scriptures, both Christian and Jewish texts. There's Jewish Gnostic texts as well. This is the Gospel of Thomas. This one came really close to making it. It's really similar to the Gospels that actually did make it. So, it's kind of worth sort of listening to a little bit. Jesus said, if those who lead you say to you, see, the kingdom is in the sky. Alpha Centauri, that's what I just said. The kingdom is up in the sky. Then the birds of the sky will precede you. If the kingdom of heaven is up there, then there's already birds that are already closer to you, than you are. If it were like that. If they say to you, it's in the sea, then the fish will precede you. But rather, the kingdom is inside of you, and it is outside of you also. When it's inside of you, then it becomes outside of you. You see? When you change you change your vision of the world. You see? It's not outside of you and then you change. It's inside of you and then becomes outside of you. Then you will be known, when you come to know yourselves, like Socrates says, know thyself, then you will become known and you will realize that it is you who are the sons of the living Father. So, as you probably know, Christianity regards Jesus as the Son of God, right? And in certain Christian texts or semi-Christian texts, they're saying, and he's not the only one. We're all sons and daughters of God. We're all equally sons and daughters of God. So sometimes I think, I have discussions with, my Christian friends, and the ones I think that are deeply thinking about these things would argue that. That it's not to say Jesus was uniquely a son of God, but Jesus was a model of what we could all be. You see, and the Gospel of Thomas is saying that rather directly. But if you will not know yourselves, you dwell in poverty, and it is you who are that poverty. So, up to you. Do you want to be a son of God, or do you want to think of yourself as a suffering schmuck? But it's up to you. You are what you think. You are what you think you are. And it's all coming from within, not from outside. Here's from the Buddhist text, Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life. The wish to awakening, this is called bodhicitta in Buddhism. Bodhicitta, the wish to awaken, should never be relinquished by those who wish to overcome the hundreds of sufferings of this world, by those who wish to relieve living beings of their distress, and by those who wish to enjoy hundreds of pleasure. This is another way of talking about good desire. Good desire is the desire for the alternative to suffering. And that's good to desire that. And that's, in its highest form, that's what bodhicitta is. Bodhicitta is I call it spiritual OCD, obsessional compulsive disorder, where all you care about, all that matters in life, is reaching the goal of life, of achieving your mission here on earth, which is to be happy as quickly as possible so that you can help other people be happy. And that wish, that bodhicitta, that desire, that motivation is made possible by another concept in Buddhism. I don't have a verse for it, but I'll just tell you about it. I'm going to be teaching it in another context this summer. It's a concept called Buddha nature. Buddha nature. And in the Buddhist text, they say we all got it. We all have as our real being, as our real sort of self, we all have the potential to be an enlightened being. And no one is without it. So I said at the beginning of the talk that we're all equal in the sense that we're all in the same boat and it's a Titanic and all. Is that joke still working? But we're also all equal in that we all equally have Buddha nature. And nobody has more of it than anyone else. It's not like I got like 90% Buddha nature and you only got 67%. And it's not like, equal, totally equal Buddhas in the making, potential Buddhas in the making. And then they also say in the Buddhist text, and because we have the potential, it must be realized someday. Because it's there as a potential, it must inevitably be realized someday. It's like going to a casino or something like that, and going to those roulette wheels. If there's one slot that says Buddha, see, and we got that's Buddha nature. If there's one slot, there could be countless other kinds of slots that are not Buddha. But eventually, turning the wheel enough times, eventually the ball is going to fall into that slot. Because the slot is there, you see? Because we all equally have Buddha nature, we are all equally heading towards perfect happiness. And that should like cheer you up a little bit on rainy days or something, you see? That we all can do it, you see? There's an alternative. And we all have the power We all have the ability to reach it. When the wish to awaken has arisen, instantly a wretch who has been bound in the prison of this world is called a child of those gone to bliss. So already, even before the ball falls into the Buddha slot, just wanting to be awakened, just wanting to be happy, puts you into the family of those awakened ones. See, the strong enough desire it's very, very encouraging, actually. If we really, really wanted it, all of a sudden we'd like be a different kind of a person, cosmically, a different kind of a being. We're the kind of being who really wants to be enlightened, really wants to be awakened. We're not the kind of being who really wants another promotion at the job, or really wants another car, or really wants another iPad, or really wants another boyfriend or girlfriend. We become a wholly different kind of being because our desire has changed. The object of our desire has shifted, and that will change you. That changes you. All right, let's follow. Let's sort of wrap it up here. Getting hot in here, isn't it? You can make it if you try. There's a method. Problem is dissatisfaction. Okay, in general. The cause is. The alternative is satisfaction, happiness, and then the method. So how am I going to get there? And there are different understandings of the method. I think this is not all religions are exactly alike. I'm not saying that, right? There are different methods argued for by different religions. This is from the New Testament. The New Testament's method, the Christian method, I think can be summarized in one word: love. Love. The essence of the Christian message is to love. And so let's just read it and then we'll talk about it. You have heard that it was said, you shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy. A lot of people say that. But I say to you, love your enemies. I always like make jokes about this because this is kind of like a koan or a riddle. Because if you did the first word of love your enemy, you couldn't get to the third word. See, you wouldn't have an enemy to love if you loved them. If you love them, they're not your enemy. This is how you disappear an enemy, instantaneously. Love your enemies, he says, and pray for those who persecute you, and so that you may become children of your Father in heaven. For he makes his sun rise on the evil and on the good, and sends rain on the righteous and on the unrighteous. This is a very important passage from the New Testament, especially for people who get all like self-righteous and say, God's going to like damn everybody and send them to hell forever and stuff like that. If you're not on our side, and that's not what Jesus said. He said God loves everyone. Equally, everyone. For if you love those who love you, what reward do you have? He says, even the taxpayers do that. And if you that just makes you a kind of a good animal to love those who love you. Animals, love their children and love their partners and stuff like that. It makes you a good like mouse or kangaroo or something. But if you want to be a mensch, love people who don't love you. How's that? For if you love those who love you, what reward do you have? Do not even the tax collectors do that. And if you greet only your brothers and sisters, what more are you doing than others? Do not even the Gentiles do the same? Be perfect, therefore, he says, as your heavenly Father is perfect. So what is a perfect human being here? What's the method that they're talking about here? It's love. It's love, universal love. Indiscriminate, you could say even. Indiscriminate love for all beings. Whether they love you back or not, whether your friends or enemies. That's the method in Christianity. And you could argue that that's a method of losing yourself also. Just like I said before, it's another way of losing yourself. You lose yourself in love. As we all know, I think, we all have some experience of that too. When you fall in love with somebody or when you love your children, you lose yourself in them. Your own interest becomes secondary to the interest of the loved one. You see, you put somebody else first. And then Jesus is saying, yeah, do that to everyone. Not just to your children, not just to your boyfriend or girlfriend, but to everyone equally. Here's the Buddhist method. I will put these teachings into actual practice. So the Buddhist method says, you got to practice also. I mean, it's not just the Buddhists that say this. It's not going to happen automatically. Okay? The goal is not going to achieve just by wanting it, you see. Despite the arguments of the law of attraction, that's not how you get things, by just wanting them. If that were the case, we would have gotten stuff a long time ago. you see, just by wanting them. You have to actually practice. For what's the point of just reciting words, he says. How will those who are sick benefit by just studying medical books? This is a nice verse for those of us who get like a little bit over intellectual about religion and just like know all the answers to all the questions on the quizzes and the 5 of this and the 4 of that and the 17 of this, and in our Buddhism we call it list Buddhism, where we just list out all the 3s of this and 10s of that. He says if you're not actually practicing it, what's the good of just knowing it? You see, put it into practice. I will be tenacious and intent on revenge. I will wage war against my mental afflictions, except for the kind that are designed to obliterate mental afflictions. This is also a very important verse. I'm very attracted to this verse. So what is he saying here? First of all, mental afflictions. Mental afflictions are things that destroy your happiness. Mental states that destroy your happiness. So how many mental afflictions have you had today so far? Yeah, oh, good, all right. So you got the answer to that one right away. Like countless, all right? Countless. So the main ones are things like anger, pride, envy, desire, okay? And he's saying, look, you can fight those mental afflictions. You should fight those mental afflictions. But the way to really be effective in fighting them is to jujitsu them. Jujitsu them means turn the energy of the mental affliction against them. That's what he's saying here, except for the kind that were designed to obliterate mental afflictions. So what does he mean? He says, use anger. Don't try to just overcome anger. Use anger to overcome anger. How do you do that? Get angry. At what? At anger itself. See? Do you think anger is a powerful force or not? Hugely powerful, right? Hugely. Lots of prana in anger. Lots of energy in anger. So if you're going to overcome something that has that much power, you got to bring something to the table. You got to, kind of fight fire with fire a little bit. So get angry. There's a very beautiful verse in the Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life where the author says, if somebody hits you with a stick, hits you physically with a stick, why don't you get angry at the stick? The stick is the thing that actually hurt you, you see. And you go, no, that's like getting angry at a computer. I don't really do that. It's an inanimate object. And I get angry at the force that was wielding the stick. I get angry at the person who was wielding the stick. He says, well, why are you getting angry at the person who's wielding the stick? They're just being wielded by another force. Anger itself, right? And as we all know, when we're angry, we're kind of out of control, aren't we? Not really in our right minds anymore. So if you want to get angry at anger. Don't get angry at the angry person. The angry person is just like the stick that the angry person is wielded by another force. So get angry at anger. And stop coddling it. Stop making excuses for it. And say, oh, I couldn't help it. Or, it's the fire in the belly. Or worse, she deserved it. You see, I couldn't help it and she deserved it anyway. Like that. Get angry at that anger. And all the excuses that you're making for anger. Get angry. If you want to overcome pride, use pride to overcome pride. How? Be proud of your attempts to be humble. Be proud of your small little attempts to be, more humble. And that's using pride. That's a good use of pride, using pride against itself. If you want to get over something like envy, have envy for people who don't have envy. Be envious. I want to be just like you. Who are you? I'm a person who doesn't have envy. I want to be just like you. See? Be envious. Use these mental afflictions. That's the way, that's the quick path. That's a quicker path. You can try to, try the other one, but it might take 3 incalculable eons, as you say in there is nothing whatsoever, this is a refrigerator magnet worthy. There is nothing whatsoever that remains difficult if one practices discipline, abhyasa. A little bit every day, and anything can be solved. Anything can be overcome. So through practicing with small difficulties, through making little efforts with little things, even great ones become endurable. So this is important advice, little by little. Toda toda, I think they say in India. Toda toda, little by little, toda toda. Okay? Take her easy. Shanai Shanai, they say in the Hatha Yoga Pradipika. Shanai Shanai, little by little, slowly, slowly. So a little bit every day is way better than a lot once in a while. So a little bit every day means a little bit of spiritual practice every day. So what would a little bit of spiritual practice every day look like? So I'll just quickly go through it. It's in my book. Every day get a good night's sleep. As a spiritual practice, get a good night's sleep. You're not doing anybody any favors by going through life crabby because you didn't get enough sleep at night. Every morning wake up without the alarm clock. Whose idea was it that a sane life began with the most irritating noise that science has invented? Every morning lie around in bed for a while before you jump up with your knickers in a twist going, where's my coffee? I got to go to my job. Lie around in bed for a while. Think about two different things. This is called the morning lull. Lull. Number one, what a blessed life I'm leading, and rehearse that a little bit. Think about all the things that are going right for you as your first moments of thought in the day. Instead of the morning zoo or some like sound, have as your first moments of consciousness thinking about the amazing life you're leading. Filled with prosperity, filled with good health mostly, with friends, with education, with peace. Nobody's bombing you, you're just busy bombing other people. And just think about all the things that are going right for you. Then second part of the morning law, and it's not going to last forever. Death awareness. A death awareness on a daily basis. Think about the fact that you will die and you don't know when. And what's important now, see? In light of the fact that you don't know when you're going to die and you definitely will die, what should I be doing with my life? Then you get out of bed. Then maybe get some orange juice or coffee or tea or whatever you have, and then sit down and meditate every morning. This is what a sort of a spiritual life would look like, a disciplined spiritual life, little by little. Okay, every morning. And it doesn't have to be big, so big thing. 15, 20 minutes is probably good enough. For most of us, 20, 30 minutes maximum. For most of us. Okay? So don't get this idea, I have to meditate for 2 hours or it's not a meditation, or somebody will take my picture if I get up early and post it on the internet, loser meditator. And you don't need to be in any particular posture. You don't have to sit on the floor cross-legged. Most of us did not grow up sitting on the floor cross-legged. We're not used to that. That's a Eastern practice. So sitting on a chair is fine. Okay? You don't have to put on any special clothes. You don't have to buy Lululemon products. You just sit down, in a comfortable position with your back straight, head up, and concentrate your mind. It's not a big deal. It's not that hard, and it's very, very helpful, living a happy life. Every morning, usually in the morning is a good time, spend some time alone, quiet. In addition to meditating, in addition to the morning lull, sit around with your breakfast, quiet, nothing on yet. No cell phone, no computer, nothing. See, just quiet, alone, solitary. And then you're ready to start your day, peaceful, happy, collected, right? Then during the course of the day, every couple of hours, stop and check in on your morality. What kind of a life did you hurt anybody in the last two hours or so? Did you lie? Did you steal? Did you even think negative thoughts? Check in on yourself, discipline. Abhyasa, that's called abhyasa, discipline. And it doesn't have to be a big deal, just a few minutes. Go to the bathroom in the job, take a little bathroom break and just think, how am I doing last couple of hours? Every day do something kind for someone else as a practice. Means that you plan it, you think about it, you're conscious of it. And not that, I probably will anyway, but that you actually do it as a practice every day. Every day, this is good to do after they've sucked all the prana from you at your job. Come home and do the same kind of thing that you usually do. You sit down in your comfortable chair, lie down on the sofa, get a nice drink or something like that. But instead of pulling out People magazine or turning on the television, just close your eyes and relax and think, what would it feel like to be perfectly happy? What would a mind that was perfectly happy feel like? What would it feel like to not have any stress, any worry, any discontentment? What would it feel like to be perfectly content? What would a heart feel like that's perfectly open? Love for all beings equally. So what would that feel like? And just practice that. Put yourself in that headspace every day. This is called the couch potato contemplation. And this is a favorite. If you start doing it, this is a very high practice actually. in the Buddhist tantric texts. This is they don't call it the couch potato contemplation, but it's a very, very high practice of just imagining what it would be like to be enlightened. And that's how you're going to get enlightened. You can't achieve a state that you haven't imagined first. So start doing it on a daily basis. Every day do some study of a sacred text. It doesn't, it doesn't have to be a Buddhist text, doesn't have to be anything. Well, just go to Barnes & Nobles or to Amazon.com and look up religion. And pretty much it's all there now, in your own language, translated in your own language, the great classics of world religion. And just pick one and study it. Go through the Bhagavad Gita, read the New Testament, read what Jesus said. Amazing guy, amazing teacher, you see. So it doesn't matter, but every day something, 15, 20 minutes of study. And at some point during the day, do some kind of physical exercise. Yoga is really good because it's kind of developed, for this purpose, a spiritual use of the body, you see. But it doesn't have to be yoga. It can be Tai Chi, it can be running, it can be dance, as long as you're doing it with the right attitude. And the right attitude is not, am I going to look better than others? Or am I in this downward dog in a much better way than the person next to me on the mat, you see? You can do yoga really wrong just like any other physical activity. But to say I got to get the energy moving, I got to keep my body alive for as long as possible because I'm trying to achieve my mission. Every day a little something like that. And that's it. That's it. And so, there's nobody in this room who can't do those things. It's not like making major changes in your life and renouncing the world and going to the Himalayas and, live in a cave or something. Not like that. You can do it here and now. But just a little bit of adjustment might make a much more saner life. If there's something you can do about it, last verse, okay? Another refrigerator magnet worthy one. If there's something you can do about it, why be unhappy? See, if there's something you can do about it, just do it. Being unhappy isn't going to help. So what is there something that you can do about it? Well, you can start living a happier life, for example. You can start living a life that consists of these components that I just went through, that you can do that. So why be unhappy? Well, what's the point? Just do what you can do to live a happier life. You can change the past. That's something that you can do. You can start thinking differently about your past. Here's how you do it, okay? This is also in the book. You can forgive people who hurt you. And you can be grateful for everything that ever happened to you. And that's a very, very different way of thinking about your past, which will result, and it's something you can do. You can do that. You actually don't have to move to do that. You just sit there. I forgive them. Forgive them. See? You don't have to buy any special equipment or, travel to any special place or chant any Sanskrit things or nothing. Just sit there and change you. There is something you can do about the past, and there's something you can do about the future. Be careful about how you're living in the present. And then the second part of the verse, and if there's nothing you can do about it, why be unhappy? What's the point of being unhappy about things that you can't change? So what are those? Pretty much everything that's happening in the present. Can't change the present in the present. It's like honking your horn in gridlock. It's like being on the 405. Maybe you've been on the 405. There's a traffic on the 405, I've noticed in Los Angeles. And sometimes that traffic, if you're in there at the right time, does not move. That's called gridlock. I don't have to tell Los Angelinos about it. And then some people think, oh, I know, I'm in traffic, I'm not moving. I know, I'll honk. Maybe you've seen people do that. Maybe you've done that. As if that's going to help anything, right? Like all of a sudden everyone's going to get out of your way, like they're going to part the Red Sea or something because you honked your horn, like Moses parting the Red Sea. And I suggest to you that getting upset about anything that's happening in the present is like honking your horn in gridlock. You can't change it in the moment. It is the perfect result of past karmic causes. And once the effects have come about, you can't change them just by getting upset about them. And wishing that they didn't change, that they weren't there, that they would change. Doesn't help. It just makes it worse, in fact. So this is kind of a radical version of acceptance, to say yes. Sometimes I wish I hadn't created the causes for this kind of effect, but I did. So what can I do now? I can deny it, or I can resist it, or I can wish it weren't the case, but it's not going to do any good. So relax already about what you can't change. And you can't change the present in the present. You can change the future. And the way to change the future is to not react stupidly in the present. You see what I mean? So Okay, we'll just go through one little thought experiment, and then we'll be done. Imagine that there's an irritating person in your life, okay? And the irritating person pops up. You know, you go to work or wherever you find you, and then there they are, doing their irritating, you know, sometimes they don't even have to say anything. They just look at them and go, oh, I just don't like the way you look, you know. So first of all, how did you get the irritating person in the first place? Irritating person is number one, right? Houston, we have a problem, okay? Houston, we have a problem. It's an irritating person. So number two, how did this happen? Is there a cause? What do you suppose the cause of an irritating person is? Take a wild guess. Everyone knows you must have been irritating to someone else in the past. What goes around comes around. And it couldn't have come around unless it went around. Nothing happens for no reason. I must have been irritating to someone else in the past. So how then can I stop this situation? How can I find the alternative? Number three, right? Find an alternative, you know, to the irritating person. Being irritating, you know, to me here and now. How can I find an alternative to that? And what would the method be? So let's check it out. Let's try. Will the irritating person stop being irritating in the moment if you are not irritating back? In the moment. Have you tried that? I should have started the other way around, because this is the one that we've tried many, many times. Will the irritating person stop being irritating in the moment by us being irritating back, as we, you know, as our instincts, you know, tell us to do? Irritating person's irritating, we'd be irritating back. Does the irritating person stop being irritating? Sometimes, though, isn't it? Sometimes you're irritating back, and they go, ooh, you know, you're even more irritating than I am. It's just like, chill out, dude. You know, wow, right? But sometimes when you're irritating back to an irritating person, they just get even more irritating, right? It just escalates, right? So which one works to change the irritating person in the moment? Not being irritating or being irritating? Neither one. Okay, neither one. So just relax and wait till the irritating person ceases to be irritating. And that will happen when the power, the energy of the cause that brought you the irritating person wears out, and not until, no matter what you do, okay? So now, let's try it all again. Did I say that it doesn't matter at all, whether you're irritating back to an irritating person or not? I didn't say that. Which one's better for your future? Be irritating back to an irritating person and recreate the cycle that brought you the irritating person in the first place. Or to just chill out and say, this is unpleasant, but damned if I'm going to recreate the cause for another experience like this in the future, and just relax until it's over. And then I'll give you another sort of piece of practical advice. This is the three-part way of disappearing an irritating person, okay? So all of that's like part of it. But here's the three-part way. This is I tried this one with several irritating people, and I tell you it works. I testify. Number one, run away. First step, run away. In other words, don't just make the same mistakes over and over and over again. If you're not strong enough to do anything other than respond in kind to an irritating person, get the hell out of the situation. Don't just sit there and like, when you know it's just going to end in the same way it's always ended before, of just getting irritating with the irritating person. I didn't see my father for 5 years because I just realized that, you know, every time I saw him, I just lost it inevitably. And 5 years, and then it was 5 years before I was ready for number two, step two. First one's run away. It's not the last one. You can run, but you can't hide. You can run away from irritating people, but guess what? They'll pop up somewhere else. You see, you can move to, you know, San Diego, and there they'll be. Yeah, different race maybe, different gender, but they'll still be an irritating person. Number two, when the irritating person starts doing their irritating person thing, you just sit there and take it. You dummy up. dummy up like a bump on a log. It says in the Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life, like a bump on a log. And inside your mind, there's a riot going on. Inside your mind, every nasty word you can think of is coming. You're hearing it, you see. But your mouth, she says nothing. Nothing comes out of your mouth. Okay? Some of you know, have invented a yoga pose. Did you know? Yeah. I'm going to do, like, maybe I should copyright it. Like, who is that copyrighted his sequence? Mr. Bikram? So I'll copyright at least one pose. This is called Mukha Bandha Asana. Mukha Bandha Asana. So mukha, as some of the people from the right part of the world know, means mouth. Bandha, what do you suppose that means? You keep it shut. Asana means that's the position I'm taking. So you can say, you know, I'm a yogi. I'm a very, very advanced yogi. I got to assume you're very, very irritating right now. So I better assume my yoga. And then, you know, that's my asana. And then if you need some help, you can have assisted, Mukha Bandha Asana assisted. For the Iyengar people, you know, you can, or maybe bring like a handkerchief, you know. But you don't say anything, okay? And that's number 2. You're getting there. And you know, it's hard. It's really hard. Don't underestimate it, okay? And so you go home and you know, replenish your vital fluids and take a rest and all like that. And, you know, meditate some more, thinking all the time. Is it in my interest to be anything other than happy ever? See? You know, all the time thinking. And then after you're really, really strong, when the person formerly known as an irritating person, it's kind of like Prince when he became a symbol, you know, the artist formerly known as Prince that we had to call him because he was just a symbol. The person formerly known as an irritating person starts doing the thing that formerly was irritating. Instead of getting irritated by the irritating person, you think, oh, I remember what it was like to feel like this irritating person feels. Because I used to be irritating back to people who were irritating. And it's not a happy way to feel. This is not a happy person. Happy people aren't interested in irritating other people. Happy people are interested in other people being happy too. Have you noticed that? Misery loves company, we say, right? But happiness does too. Happy person isn't interested in being irritated. This is not a happy person. And the proper human response to an unhappy person who's being irritating is compassion. You see? Love and compassion, like Jesus said. Love your enemies. If you love them, there wouldn't be enemies. If you were patient with an irritating person, there wouldn't be an irritating person. You just disappeared them totally. There's no irritating person until and unless you are irritated. And if you're not irritated, they're not an irritating person. This, for the Buddha heads in the room, is called dependent origination. Dependent, interdependence. There's no irritating person without an irritated person, and vice versa, right? So if you break one half of that relationship, then the other half has to change too. You see? If you stop being irritated, then they can no longer be an irritating person. And that's the end of one irritating. And then you start on the next one. That first set of sequences, first series of 3 things, for some people that will take years. For other people, maybe just a couple of weeks. Depends on, you know, how strong the karma is that you need to overcome with it. But that's how you do it, and that's the only way to do it. Okay? That's the only way to get rid of irritating people. So if there's something you can do about it, just do it. Don't get upset. Just do what you can do about it. And if there's nothing you can do about it, you know, sit there like a bump on the log and take it. There's nothing you can do about it. They're an irritating person. Okay? And that's how to live a happy life. It's kind of as simple as that in a way. Does that sound simple? Easy to say, right? Harder to do. Recognize that there's a problem. Recognize that the problem is yours, not somebody else's. That you're the cause of the problem. Have some strong desire for an alternative. Be good to yourself. Wish for some happy life. And then start deploying the methods, the only methods that will bring it. And the only methods that are bring it are taught in places like this. Not in the shopping malls, not on television, not on, you know, some website somewhere. They're taught in the spiritual communities. Be kind to other people. When somebody hits you on one side of the face, what did Jesus say? Turn the other cheek. You see? Yeah.
Turn it off from you.
Yeah. And that wasn't because he was like super, super nice. It was because he realized that the only way to have somebody hit you upside the head is if you've done that to someone in the past. So, thank you. Thank you for slapping me. I just got rid of one karma, one karmic event. And then he says, let's get rid of another one while we're here. Do we have any more karma here? Like the slapping the face karma? You see? And who's teaching that on television? Who's teaching that in consumer capitalism? Who's teaching that in the non-spiritual communities? You see? Not teaching the true methods of happiness. Here we're teaching the true methods, and we have a monopoly on it. The spiritual traditions have a monopoly on true happiness. So if you're interested in being a happy person, find the spiritual tradition that works for you. It doesn't have to be Buddhism. It doesn't have to be anything. Just make sure it's authentic. Make sure it's time-tested. Find a good teacher who can teach you that tradition, and then practice it. Of course, put it into practice, little by little, toda. Little bit every day. And if you do that, in 6 months, you'll be a happier person, or your money back. Money back guaranteed on that, for sure. Okay. It's 10 o'clock. We've been here a long time. Maybe we should end it here. When I come back, maybe we'll have questions and stuff like that. Time for questions when I come back in June, if you're still around. And I hope to see you then. I think in about 10 days back to LA. Is it 10 days, 2 weeks, something like that? Okay. Eh? Yeah. All right. Thank you for coming. Thank you very much.